I had one.
Oh, all right. James,
I
you
have
mentioned that
one.
you have a support request. Awesome. Share it. So
Um,
have you done Wise Crowds before, James? Before I
no.
just Okay. All right, cool. So let me give you a brief overview of the game. What you're all going to do is just take a minute or two to describe your situation, your question, your challenge. And then
Mhm.
what everybody else in the group is going to do is we're going to ask for clarifying questions. Um, so we're going to ask you a few more questions to give us some more information, and we're just going to take a few minutes for that. And after those clarifying questions, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll invite you to turn off your webcam and microphone, um, and then to importantly listen while the rest of the group has a conversation. And go ahead and take notes and listen while we are uh, doing. Simon, no, it was not the intention to match with the same person 3 times. Wow, that's good times. So, James, and after we do that consultation, we will ask you to come back and you don't need to turn off your webcam and microphone now, but we'll ask you to basically return to and joining us for the call, and so that you can share with us the information that was the most valuable to you. So to get started, what I'll invite is just to tell us about your situation so that we have some the basic information about what you're asking advice on.
So I
So
share.
yeah, tell us what's your help request, James? How can we be of service?
Okay. My need is I'm currently involved in a merger arrangement. Like there are two organizations that are coming together to kind of like collaborate in order to build upon the strengths of each other to maximize impact. Basically, there are two organizations. So one of them is Impact Hub Kampala, of which I'm a part of, and the other one is Design Hub Kampala. It's another entity. So I'm supposed to first. I'm thinking of crafting a session or a workshop plan that can be that can help both sides, to identify what are the strengths and weaknesses of each other so that they can be able to, identify what they could do to maximize on the strengths and build on the strengths of each other, basically. So I'm thinking of some kind of like a session that could tap into the inner resource that could help members of all the participants in this workshop do some kind of like thorough reflection to assess the relationships, the relationships they have, the networks they have, the connections they have, the resources they have internally as individuals and as teams, and all those strengths, bringing them and making them visible, either on an artifact, a chart, a flip chart, I don't know, so that we're able to look at, wow, this is what we have. So what can we do with this, to maximize our strength and achieve? Because our goals are kind of like aligned.
Hmm.
We are hoping to build, uh, you know, create opportunities for social entrepreneurs to network, um, and also do trainings in entrepreneurial development, personal development. Those are the areas we focus on, both organizations. So
Okay.
how my request to this group or to this team is which activity, which liberating structure could I use to maximize on that, to be able to identify the assets that are currently amongst both companies or both entities, and then identify opportunities to do either joint programs, joint projects that maximize on our strengths. Yeah, that's the request.
Awesome. Well, then we'll ask the group for what clarifying questions they have in addition to your help request.
Okay, yeah, I have a couple of questions, but for me it's difficult to ask them because I don't know. I felt that I was a little bit lost in the explanation, but yeah, just one question. What does impact means to you? I heard impact several times, so I'm curious about what does that means to you, James? This context, of course.
Yes. So what we're hoping to do, our goal is to build, is to nurture a culture of purpose-driven entrepreneurship in Uganda and Africa. So entrepreneurship that's based on purpose and values rather than, just making money or these other things, but entrepreneurship which is based on meaningful, purposeful work. That's the impact we want to create. It's mainly based on I don't know whether you've heard of the Japanese model of ikigai concept, of the philosophy, the Japanese philosophy.
And what tools or skills do you currently have to build this network of purpose following entrepreneurs?
Yeah, what I have in mind at the moment is I'm using, there's a tool on community resource mapping that I use normally when I'm in the communities, like the real on-ground communities. It's something I want to use, but I'm blending it with, there's another tool called the Ikigai approach, where we try to map up what are the strengths of the individuals, what are their passions, what are the opportunities there, something like that. Those are the two tools I'm currently using. Tools that kind of like map strengths, map resources, map opportunities within individuals.
And just my last question, what about in terms of networks or resources or support that these entrepreneurs, once that you build this community of purpose entrepreneurs, do you have any other network that will be able to support them in their purpose with assets, with people, with more resources? Do you have that?
Yes. So we have the different communities. So there is this partnership is like kind of like a, what can I use? It's a combination of different consortium of different organizations which have networks also. So there is Impact Hub, there is Design Hub has its network. Also, there is Social Innovation Academy, which also has its network. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. You go ahead, Philip.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Nice quick one. I mean, are the other two structures or the two entities equal in terms of resources and people? Are they balanced, or is it one is big and the other is small?
Thank you. That's a good question. So the impact, the Design Hub, which is the other entity which we're going to be merging with, has already been in existence for like 10 years in Uganda. So they already have an established network of members in their community. They already have established donors and connections. And but the challenge they have is how to run programs. They do not know how to run programs effectively. For us, the Impact Hub, we're new, we're just starting this year, but we are very good at running programs. So one of the one of the goals of this partnership is we're going to be helping them, the design hub, to run programs, kind of. And yeah.
Okay, Simon, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted some clarity on the two different organizations. So a similar question to Philip, but perhaps if you could share two things that the two organizations have in common, and two things that you think that they don't have in common, that they perhaps won't agree upon.
So both organizations have the goal is the focus for both organizations is entrepreneurial development. So we run trainings, we run boot camps for on social entrepreneurship. Both of them are focuses on social entrepreneurship, but we also intend to do other ways to support entrepreneurs, like accessing grants, accessing capital, investment capital, connecting entrepreneurs to investors, matchmaking, doing networking events with entrepreneurs, amongst entrepreneurs, but also having events as within the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, like with other ESOs or support organizations. So running summits, running conferences with like-minded entrepreneur support organizations. And yeah, those are, and yeah, that's basically the core of the DNA of what we do, both organizations.
Okay, and perhaps some things where you think there's differences between the organizations and the way that they see the world and what they want to manifest.
That's a good question. I've not really thought through that. Let me just take note of it quickly. Because at the moment, we're having meetings. I think we had the first meeting last month, but we're trying to set up meetings to have conversations on our values, what we believe in, where we're heading, what we basically talking about ourselves as an organization. So we had the first meeting. I think the second one is going to be 2 weeks from now. So all of that is still part of the process of trying to understand each other and our values and visions and everything. But from what I've read about the hub, and of course with ours, it's mainly, trying to nurture that culture of purpose-driven entrepreneurship. And one of the things we believe in, we even operate more on a stewardship model of governance and of operation, which is more empowering rather than centralizing power in the hands of few individuals. So some kind of like a purpose-driven approach to governance, where power is not centered in one person, but in SINA, it's holacracy. We are doing holacracy and self-organization. It's something similar that the Design Hub is also doing, with just a few differences, but the whole concept is the same: self-organized entities. Yeah, but we're still learning each other. There's a lot to learn, but that's a good.
I think, James, you've given us a lot of information, and so I just want to get basically into the consultation for you. As I understand, you're trying to you're looking for ways to identify synergies and possible collaborations between two organizations that are merging. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to turn off your webcam and microphone, but to listen while we have a conversation, and go ahead and take notes. So, wise and wise crowd, what comes up for you guys.
Well, it's too bad that you cut it short, because I was okay, so I'll ask the question to you guys. Like, what do you think? What do you think is at stake here?
Simon, you're on mute.
It sounds like if these two organizations are able to collaborate and cooperate, then what's at stake is what could be, you know, if these two organizations were able to work together. And I had a similar question that I wanted to follow up, which was, you know, what's the ideal scenario here? What's the outcome? What's the best outcome that could possibly be from this? What do they want to happen? But I think I sense it's understanding that each of these organizations has its own strengths and networks and resources, and you know, how can they work together to bring about a better outcome?
Anybody else?
Or is it like a moment where they want to, you know, the purpose of this is to meet together? I see that there was a first meeting to meet again and to collectively decide. So is it the how do you say, the bringing of two organization, or is it the preparation of the bringing of the two organization? I thought it was the first part, like, you know, let's together decide what we are here to do together. Is that something that you guys also felt? Or because there was also the story of getting you know, blending together, which is a different story.
Yeah, I got that James is in a state of mapping. When I asked him about the tools, he talked a lot about mapping, who are the stakeholders and so on. I think that's a great tool for starting this over. Of course, it's important also to be clever and mindful about what are we mapping actually. Only the people, well, we want to map their characteristics, we want to map the skills, what they are good at. We want to map also their agendas, what they can bring on the table, what they will like from this group, from this network of people. I don't know, once those mappings are ready, it will be a matter about specific. I will say start with the major stakeholders who are sponsoring all these things, asking them what is the ideal outcome for you guys. What do you actually want me to blend all of these maps and all these people? Ask him also to be as honest as possible, because in purpose entrepreneurship, there is always, yes, we follow the purpose, not the money, but they follow the money as well. So yeah, trying to be as honest as possible with that. Yes, if you want money, okay, we can track the people that will be actually able to generate money, but keeping the purpose part very unmovable as possible, right? Like being loyal to that purpose. That's
you talk about mapping, Gus. I'm wondering whether, you know, in terms of the structure of this meeting, and Jeremy, maybe there's some liberating structures, some ideas that can be used for this meeting that helps James to map the values of the two organizations and understand what they share in common and what objectives they share in common and what purpose they share in common. Because identifying that first and foremost, and you know, doing that in person and building relationships around common purpose and around common values is going to be a first step towards collaboration.
Yeah. There's a bunch of different structures that come up based on what you guys are sort of describing. To come back to that initial question of What's at stake? I think whenever I think about two different groups coming together, what's at stake has a lot to do with reputation and identity. You know, if it's a scary thing to sort of like surrender or like give up the identity that has been established for the new identity of the group. So like whether we like it or not, there is some form of like I don't want to go so far as to say conflict, but there's a field of tension around that. Let's see. So that's one thing that I noticed is very interesting, and I might actually just to give you guys like the laundry list of structures that jump out for me, and then to maybe highlight just a couple that I'm more curious at. So if we're talking about the question of purpose, you know, what's our direction? 9 Whys is really easy to recommend. Future present as well, to sort of dwell into this idea of like what could be the bright future that we're navigating towards. There is social network webbing, which comes to mind, which would invite us to create a map of the relational field between and sort of across the organizations, and sort of base our strategy on how we could weave those networks together. There is appreciative interviews to sort of zoom into this, you know, to use this narrative inquiry to think about what stories have led to past success and how we can use that to sort of discover our principles that are essential to success. And then min specs is often a good move. So if you can generate a big list of, you know, hey, here's all our principles, you know, using min specs, going principle by principle down the list and saying, hey, if we ignored this one, could we still be successful in our goal? And only sort of adding to the shopping cart what is most essential that cannot be ignored. But two of the structures that really jump out to me that is more interesting are both wicked questions and TRIZ. So, you know, TRIZ never gets old. You know, we've got ourselves a challenge. You know, how is it that we turn this collaboration into a dumpster fire? Just helps us to avoid that negative space and, you know, pay attention to the things we want to, the mistakes we would rather avoid is pound for pound just as good as the things that we'd like to do right. And wicked questions, I think, is very interesting, especially if I combine it with that creating the laundry list through something like appreciative interviews. You know, what are the complementary yet opposing forces that we have to keep in mind while we are bringing these two groups together? You know, if we look at the long list of values or principles that we may be able to generate, are there two things in there that form a particularly strong paradox that we might like to think about how we can integrate? So in addition to TRIZ and wicked questions, the one that makes the most sense to me is social network webbing, just to create the physical artifact of who are the people. And then in terms of like strategy or what you do together, I would just establish first and foremost, let's just find the other friendlies. Let's just make sure that everybody knows who everybody else is and has everybody's contact details more or less on speed dial, so that we can open up the possibility to collaborate and support. And then maybe, you know, some interesting stuff. There's like low-hanging fruit stuff. You know, obviously the gathering will do that all by itself. And, you know, a cheap and easy goal is, you know, organize a bigger gathering, right? You know, with the more of the stakeholder environment. Anybody else?
Yeah. Listening to you guys, I think that you're going too fast. You know, you want to make this, you know, a wedding party or a pre-wedding party. And I think, you know, we could take another slant, which is much lighter, you know, because There's a will apparently to do something together. Well, let's find something to do together. Without necessarily thinking of resources and all. Let's find an interesting project. We're into social innovation, so that's really cool. So why don't we find something where we can really, first of all, sit and converse about it. So I would think that one of the structure would be conversation cafe, which is really very interesting to find out what could we do together. And so basically the idea of challenge rather than virtues and purpose at this stage, I think it's better. Just let's go and play mini golf, you know, and see how it turns out. And so again, you know, one question that we didn't have time to ask is the time that they have to do this meeting. Is it a day? Is it a morning? Is it? But I would tread lightly. I would tread lightly, and I would try to use liberating structures to get conversation, interesting conversation, basically between the two, rather than strategy, purpose, values, and all the things that are extremely heavy duty. And they're not very good at giving directions either. So what? That's my 2 pence. Now, in terms of structures, of course, I mentioned Conversation Cafe. One, two for all. Absolutely an amazing structure for that. Although it's not a super complicated one, it's a lovely one for this. Appreciative inquiries is really nice. Also to know how you live your life, how you consider things that you do worthwhile when they're working well. There is, and then if you want to go further, then depending, like again, on the scope of the meeting, you know, if it's 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, something, or a morning, you can go then and try. But I would not try to structure too much. Let's put it this way. I like TRIZ. TRIZ is excellent for that as well, because it's about challenges. It's about real concrete things. Wicked Question is extraordinary because this is the mindset that is really, really good for bringing people together in a community and in a community of maybe purpose later. So these are really, really good structures as well.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So I can go next. So I've been thinking that I resonate in some way also with Philip, and I would also add the user experience fishbowl and basically start with some sort of question that you are interested people to be discussing, and then invite people to join the conversation. That will be something to get started, and probably after that, see how, like, 1, 2 for all, and see which are ideas that are raising up from this conversation, what people are interested to work on, what resonates with them. And based on that, I would also include 25-10 crowdsourcing, so that you can prioritize which are going to be like the ideas that are more valuable for most of the people. And from there, I will probably go to TRIZ to figure out how to fail with this of each of these ideas, so that people will, as Jeremy was saying, like remove the negativity, but also leave behind this sort of tension that could come, so they will express all their fears in some way without being explicit about this is something that is happening, because the context give it. And then I think that it would be good to connect it with something I haven't think yet, but probably like 15% solutions, or either like Troika Consulting, because if you already have a lot of people that are experienced in some way, instead of doing this social mapping that you can probably generate just by a tool, you can do it actively and having the help of people during the session. So that's another way in which you don't have to schedule additional time, and you can get something tangible from the beginning. But this will probably take a couple of hours, more than a day, if you want to get it, to make it work. And yeah, I think that will be nice. And if people come out with good ideas and maybe start projects, then afterwards I will say that they can go through a shift and share and present short success stories of what they have been doing. And after that, you can really work on the purpose part, because I think first you need to show them that there is certain degree of equality, which is not yet there, and getting to know them without the tension of we have a goal, we have to meet that goal, and after that, there's no time really to think through things. I will try to write this because it was done. Thinking
Nice.
out loud.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Sylvia. I really like the 25-10 crowdsourcing to get tangible. One string that we've been sort of workshopping with is the flow into TRIZ, so to identify challenges, and then into discovery action dialogue to already start sharing stories about how to respond to those challenges that we know of, and then going from that discovery action dialogue into something more concrete around, well, not concrete, actually into a little bit of theory around different forms of wealth and value, so that we can identify those resources and then think about how we might recombine those with something like 25-10 crowdsourcing to again generate those ideas. But these are dope. Anybody else? Or should we bring James back?
Yeah, for your string, I would start with the same things, and I would on the idea of how do you say, getting to know each other, I would do impromptu prototyping, because there you act something. So once you have discovery and action dialogue, and when you have a challenge, et cetera, to play with that, but to play with it, you know, we're not yet, you know, going for the big prize, you know,
Right.
the Grand Slam trophy.
That's a nice one. There was a variation that came up at this conference we just did, and that was anxiety circus into improv prototyping. And so anxiety circus is kind of like the in between 25-10 crowdsourcing and TRIZ. So, but using the same innovation of 25-10 crowdsourcing, which is write down your idea on an index card. Instead of writing down an idea, invite people to write down their biggest concerns. Like, what are they most worried about? What are the things that they are having struggle with? And then using the results of that directly into improv prototyping, which is a bit more of like an improvisational, super lightweight sort of almost like turning how do I describe this? Turning scenario planning into much more of like a gaming exercise, right? A combination between improv and like a strategy game. But dope. Thanks, Philip. It's nice to be reminded of that stuff. James, we've given you way too much information. So why don't you come back and tell us what was most valuable for you?
Wow, this is amazing. I have taken away conversation for a starter, for the beginning part, conversation cafe in a relaxed, playful way, just to around a social innovation project that we could do together. Because one of the things which I didn't mention is someone asked what is the best outcome from this collaboration, and it's joint programs, joint things. What interesting things can we do together? So this approach would be good. I also like the idea of the fish bowl, and which after moves into the conversation. Although I was in my mind, I didn't really hear very well what Sylvia said of how exactly it would work. Because with the fishbowl, you have two circles. There's the inner circle and the outer circle. So I'm wondering what would happen. Maybe we have a group having a discussion around important questions that matter regarding this partnership, while the outer circle is observing. Then after a time, there's a switch, something like that, but I'll come up with something. I love the appreciative inquiry, wicked questions, trick. No, trick, is it? TRIZ, TRIZ, yes, TRIZ.
TRIZ. Yeah.
It's really, this is really helpful. I'm going to reflect more on this and come up with some kind of like a session flow. But thank you, everyone. This has really been helpful. I think I got what I need. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we should just stop right now, right? If we, while we're ahead. Does anybody else have an additional design brief that we can work on? Question, situation, challenges?
If no one is jumping in, I can share a really light one. It's just some requests that have came from a client recently. Like they are liking the work that I'm doing with them, and now they are willing me to help them in making a restatement of their corporative culture. What are the values? What are the beliefs? What are their things? And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I don't want to share more information rather than just that. So maybe just a little bit of context. Who is this company? They are like a liquid staking provider in some gold chain around. And they are mostly Hispanic. They are from, the CEO is Latin American, but the management team is part in Spain, part in Mexico and Argentina. Yes, that's the thing. If you have more clarifying question, happy to reply back.
Clarifying questions.
Clarifying questions, yeah. How long do you have? I mean, what do you have in mind? I mean, what's the scope here?
That's the thing, that I don't have anything in mind because this is a really new request. My job with them has been more focused on incentive design, programs design, how they mint more tokens, what kind of controls they put on them and so on. But I have actually done some in-person, like offline work with them, workshops for building their whole value flows, mapping it all. And they really like how I engage with them and how I make them think about all the stuff that they're doing. So they just came to me last Friday, like, hey, Gustavo, you want me to do this? And I was like, yeah, of course I can do that. But I haven't give them, I mean, I know I can, but I mean, in this bandwidth, I was in another thing. I just haven't given that the proper bandwidth to start planning for it.
I have a clarifying question. So this organization wants you to kind of like help them or support them to redefine their values. Am I correct?
Yes, to redefine, to adjust their company identity,
Okay.
including their purpose statement, their vision, their mission, their values, their manifesto. Let's say that they want to share with their community clients. stakeholders, etc.
Understood. Thank you.
Who approached you?
Hmm?
Who approached you?
Who approached me?
Who went and say, hey, Gustav, why don't you think about it?
This is the chief operations officer.
Okay.
Probably under a request from the CEO. But yeah, I also have person-to-person connection with the CEO. It's
How
a
big is the
startup.
organization?
This is a company of less than 20 people working. I mean, they have like a lot of programmers or stuff, and we're talking about a management team of 6 to 7 people, including the CEO, the CTO, and the operations.
How many did you say?
The management team, they are 6, like between
6.
CEO, 6 managing the whole startup, let's say.
Okay, thanks.
Do you know how big their user base is?
We are talking about few Ks of users. This is in the near blockchain. It's kind of a ghost chain that no one's used, but there are a couple of people, couple of thousand users that no one knows. But that's another story.
Okay.
So what do they do again?
So the technical answer to that is liquid staking. A decentralized liquid staking protocol. It's like the protocol that gives security to the network in exchange of some more money to the validators. Is that clear? I mean, like really technical.
Yeah, well.
But they are a DAO, they have their own tokens that they use for governance.
Okay.
And they are implementing like revenue features for people that are voting. So this is kind of closing the loops of sustainability that they need to prove on their tokens, because if people want to buy their tokens so they can vote on things that will give them money, the theory of sustainability is based on that, remembering that nowadays there are a lot of people creating new type of money. Most of them is not useful at all. This is having actually some kind of utility. It still needs to be proven that this kind of closed loop value flows, let's say, is what it brings sustainability to this kind of crypto movements.
Yeah, so they're on the edge there. They're,
Mhm.
you know.
I'm not sure if you'll know the answer to this, Gus, or not, but maybe it's a question to get into deeper with them. Is who do they want their users to be? Like, who are they trying to reach? Because if they're redefining their values, that's the first question they want to be asking is, who do they want to resonate with?
Yeah, they are really anarchist people, and that's actually why I'm working with them. I love them. And they are willing actually to bring to more fair finances to emerging countries. Countries like Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, but also in Africa, also in Asia, that they are looking some kind of new opportunities. Access to finances, where we are coming from a world in which that access has been like reduced to elite people. So they are actually willing to make that more accessible for whoever wants to go there.
Okay. And so last question is this, who you'll be working with them, as I understand it, in some kind of workshop to help them to redesign these. Who's going to be present at this meeting?
Yes, in this meeting will be the CEO, the CTO, the COO, the CMO, a business developer, and probably one more community guy or user interface guy or development guy, I don't know, and me. So top management of the CEO, maybe some community guy. I will actually ask. I actually did ask for some community guy to be there. Me, yeah, 6 to 7 people. I can ask for more, I can ask for less. It's up to me. I think I feel comfortable with not more than 8.
And sorry, I do have one more question. Do they have a way, a means by which they can interact with their community and get feedback from their community?
Yes, they do have an ambassadors program. They have Discord. They have their channels for interested people to be there. But between you and me, there is no so much community out there. So it's their communities for friends and family and few big stakers, money makers that are the ones sustaining it all.
Okay. So part of the purpose of this is to extend their community using by redefining their, yeah, got it.
I have a question to check on that, like why? So the project is some amount of time old. Why go through the trouble of redefining your sort of purpose and vision statement?
I think it's a revision rather than a redefinition. And actually, I will start by that. I had a look on it. I don't think the current vision statement is actually wrong. But coming back to the why is actually they are having a birthday in August. They are planning the launch of few programs that is going to be a surprise or whatever to their community. And since Gus is around, let's make him help us with this that we haven't revision since we launched it.
Okay.
How many years ago? How long was it launched?
I understood they have been there for live for a couple of years, so it's
That's a
in
long
crypto
time.
is long enough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anybody else? Then Gustavo, you know the game. Turn off your webcam and microphone, and importantly, listen. Well, I should really say the listening part before I say turn off your webcam and microphone. But at any rate, what comes up for you guys? What structures might we apply, or how might we approach creating or revising a mission or value statement?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is to push Gustavo out of his comfort zone. So it can be playful, since it's sort of everything is in good humor. Huh? They've been there for 2 years. They have something to offer in August. It's a birthday. And since it's about V3 W3, then I think it'd be interesting for him to think about getting as many participating people possible. Rather than just the 6 guys with the huge titles that don't befit real anarchists. So I would go back to the anarchy roots of the thing. And depending again on the time that he has and the means that he has, I think that the best structure for this is strategic not working. It allows you so many rifts, variation, topics, areas of inquiry. It can be done with almost everybody. Well, not almost, with everyone. I would insist to get as many people as he can. And do one of those nice big structures that you can do quickly or take your time. And rethink the entire thing, because that's the That's the beauty of that structure, is that you can either focus on areas that are of interest, and at least to start the conversation, if they, if it doesn't go all the way to designing the logo, redesigning the logo or something. So that's my two pence.
Yeah, if I could say something also. So Gustavo, I don't know whether you've read the book Finding Your Why by Simon Sinek. Of course, we're all familiar with Start With Why, but there's a sequel to that one, book 2. It's called Finding Your Why, and it focuses more on helping and supporting teams and groups to identify a why statement. I would highly recommend that. There's an activity in the book called the 3 conversations exercise, and it's designed to generate the stories of emotional stories of success and moments when they felt proud of being part of that organization, because the values are embedded in the stories. So if you could, for the introduction, I would suggest appreciative interview, and then you move on to the 3 conversations exercise. The audio book is available free on YouTube. You could download it. Yeah, that's my input.
Can you put the thing in the chat, James?
Pardon?
Can you put it in the chat? The 3 conversations.
Okay, the link.
The link, yeah.
Okay, let me look.
If you can, huh?
Let me look for it.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a really obvious path that is like 9 whys into a 9-word purpose statement that will certainly stick the landing. With a bigger group, or any size group really, that 9 whys into 9-word purpose statement with like 1, 2, 4 all, and then sort of revisiting that 9-word purpose statement with something like 25-10 crowdsourcing, which is just what we did exactly in the Liberating Structures learning journey, right? That move of 9 whys into purpose statement into 25-10. But there's a less obvious structure that I think is really interesting. Which is drawing together. So in whatever way that you can, get folks thinking about that purpose statement or the vision that they have for the organization or for the project. And rather than writing something, invite them to create a work of art using just the symbols, where a square equals support, a triangle equals goal, a circle equals wholeness, a spiral equals change, and a star person equals relationship. Using just those 5 symbols, invite everyone, and literally everyone, to make a visual, to take just 5 minutes times 2 or times 3, something along those lines. So let's just say times 2. First take 5 minutes to draw a prototype of what their vision statement is, then take 5 more minutes to either redraw it or add further detail and embellishment, and then go through the exercise of inviting people to interpret each other's purpose statement and see what type of meaning, significance, and importance comes out of those interpretations. So that creates an intentional space of misinterpretation. It creates an intentional space for noise and confusion. And in that space of confusion, good things can often fall by using this method. So drawing together is one way that I think could be really interesting to get to your sort of content space in a more creative way. And again, it sort of rises to the challenge that Philip, I think, is rightly putting towards us, which is, include and unleash everybody. So with that visual artifact, everybody can participate in that. You can literally make a collage out of images, out of all the different images, so you can find a way to synthesize them together if you wanted to make a visual itself, or if you just wanted to sort of take the interpretations and run with those as an actual statement. And then you can jump into something like 2510. Anybody else?
Sure, I could share something. There's a tool I've used sometimes. It's called life mapping. And what actually happens, you divide two teams. One of them, it's like you're trying to map the major events over the years of the individual or the organization, for instance. So what happens, you get a starting point, you draw a dot, and then you keep drawing spirals. And at every turn of a spiral, you put the year and then what major event happened that year. For example, let me say if the organization has been there for 5 years, we could say this is now 2023. So we do a spiral of 2022, 2021, 2020, like that up to when the organization began. And then inside every spiral, you just write what major event has happened that defines a certain turn in the organization. It could be a turn towards something positive, or it could have been a turn towards something undesirable. And then after that, people can also draw another imaginary life mapping, which paints a picture of what they imagined when the organization began. So one is the reality of what has happened. The other is the imaginary, because many times when the organization is beginning, they have maybe like a 5-year plan and the things they thought they are going to do. So a comparison between the imaginary life map and then the actual life map helps the organization to think through what actually needs to be revised as they are revising the vision, mission, and all those other elements. Yeah, that's what I could share.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else? And if you could leave Micah, if you can find a link or a description of this exercise that you're describing, I would be very grateful if you could drop that in the chat for us.
All right, let me see.
And considering we're running low on time, what I'll do is invite Gustavo to come back and share with us what he found the most valuable from our consultation.
Thank you. I have to admit that when Philip started talking and invited me to be out of my comfort zone, I was like, whoa, what is going to tell me? But then he was like, he needs to be playful. And I was like, oh, fuck, this guy doesn't know me. So playfulness is covered in my work. Don't worry, but in any case, thanks for that. And yes, I'm just getting homework for me. I need to go deeper in what's strategic not working is. I'm still looking forward to understand what are these 3 conversations exercise that James mentioned. Jeremy, I love the drawing together activity that you described. I will definitely go deep into that and use that. So thank you very much. Yeah, again, the same thing for this life mapping exercise that Mika was discussing. I would love to read about it. But in general, thank you. I mean, this is amazing.
Good stuff. And I just put a link in the chat to a video that I made last year on strategy not working. So if you want some more context, feel free to dig in. Well, nerds, let's see. Well, that's pretty much our time. thanks everybody for suffering the slow start of me getting back from walking the dog late, and I appreciate you for hanging out and offering what wisdom there is to be found towards each other's projects. We will be back here next week, same bat time at Monday, 4 p.m. Central European time. We hope to see you then again, and safe travels.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Have a good week.
Jeremy, could you stay on the call?
Bye, everyone.
Or for
Thanks,
a few
everyone.
minutes, 1 minute or so.
Sure.
Speak soon.
Take care.
So,
You had a question?
yes, I had a question about, it's one of the last structures. Yes, I think it is the social networking, social network webbing. Is it the one which involves waving, right?
Yeah.
I tried to read it last week, but I really didn't understand, especially the sequence of steps and what's exactly done. Could you
Yeah.
like just
It's both. It can be done in different ways, like most structures can. So let's describe the simple version of social network webbing.
Mhm.
The simplest version would look like 3 concentric rings.
Yeah.
Like not like this, but like inner ring, middle ring, outer ring, right?
Mm.
And then in your inner ring, you would start with the people that are basically sort of in the room, that are in the most most concretely in both of these organizations, right? You would draw a little relationship map, or just put their names is sufficient to get started for the simpler version. And then in the middle ring, you would put the people that are the most tightly affiliated, that show up regularly when there's events organized, or that, or have been longtime contributors. You would sort of put the people that are in that sort of feedback circle, that might not deliver a program, but will certainly let you know if you ask them for advice about a program, right? And then in the sort of outermost ring, you would draw the wider version of the community, right? You would just write down the groups, the people, whoever sort of comes up that's in the sort of overall ecosystem that maybe might show up, but don't hold your breath on. These are the people in your widest stakeholder environment. And then what I would do is I would suggest drawing lines to these different groups or people, right? So you sort of have everything in this sort of condensed cluster of both the outer environment, overall feedback circle, and then the actual sort of like, hey, we're committed in these organizations. And then I would start drawing lines of connection between these different groups. And that could look like, in the inner circle, who did you know? Who did you have some form of relationship with before we showed up here today? Oh, I used to work with this person on a project. We've done this stuff together, just to sort of establish like, hey, who do we have? Where are their pre-existing relationships? And then to think about, after I've sort of drawn those connections between different groups, I basically want to stand back and, tilt my head to the side and squint and go, okay, what's sort of missing in this web of relationships? Just like, any type of network weaving operation, your goal is to get people talking that haven't been talking before, more or less.
So in those centric circles, so when they write the names on the post-it notes, where do they put the post-it? Like, that's the part, and then the linking, that's the part which confuses me.
Yeah, that's the way I've had the most success, is first just visualize, okay, the nodes or the people or the organizations, and then I go back over the top and I draw the connections.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. I'll try to read through it again and internalize it. But thank you,
Cool.
thank you.
Cool, James. Well, thanks for
The
hanging out.
next meeting, you will send a link for the next. When is the next one?
The next one is again it's the same link at the same time, but next week on Monday.
Okay, okay, cool.
So if you register on the Luma website, you can register for the whole series, and then I'll just drop them in your calendar.
Okay, thanks. Looking forward to the next.
Great, James. Thanks so much for your time. I'll see you hopefully next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah.